Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live in the old home office once again, this time following Purdue's 73 to 52 win at Penn State. The score was actually, there was a discrepancy in the score. All sorts of hilarity ensued. It appeared to be 71 to 52 at the end of the game on television. It was actually 73 to 52, so FYI. Thank you to our sponsor, the Purdue Union Club Hotel, the newly reinvented Purdue Union Club Hotel. Next time you're planning a trip to campus, please keep them in mind. You will not be sorry. This obviously is your wrap video following Purdue's, again, 73 to 52 win over Penn State. I am going to warn you, first off, parental advisory. I have been up since 6 a.m. It is presently 11:31 p.m. I am a caffeine-addled disaster right now, sitting here drinking Arizona iced tea out of one of the 97 hotbox pizza cups we have bouncing around this house. This could go off the rails real quick. This was Purdue's last road game. It was Purdue's last game outside the state of Indiana, and I, for one, welcome this development. Covering these games at home sucks. It sucks. You know why? Because I have to watch the game on television. I have access to something called live stats. And perhaps you're aware, the television feed runs behind what's actually occurring live. Twitter runs ahead of what shows up on television. I don't know why anyone follows these games on Twitter. God bless you people who do that. And I don't know why I sit there and I tweet updates. You all know. But anyway, be that as it may, what I try to do is I keep the game on my YouTube TV, on my computer, on the TV I have up on the wall here overhead with the live stats open. The TV is never live because that's not the nature of broadcasting. The YouTube TV, it's impossible to sync up for me. I really, really struggle with. The reason I have two monitors up is because what I try to do, whether it's a home game or a road game, I try to watch it live and then have it synced up to where I can look right down and see it again. So thus, I've essentially watched the game twice real time. Getting everything synced up is a disaster. And having things spoiled for me by live stats and by Twitter is another disaster. And I can't tell you how many times possessions for me have been spoiled by the live stats or by Twitter. When Jaden Ivy made the three at Ohio State, I'm sitting there watching Purdue dribble up the floor, and Purdue's official account, which I need to have on mobile alert because, news, tweets a little money symbol. Thank you, Chris Foreman. A little money symbol. So I figured that didn't represent Purdue losing in heartbreaking fashion. I figured that didn't represent some kind of turnover or brick or something like that. So all of the suspense of that moment was spoiled for me because of all of the complications that go with watching these games on television. It has been a disaster. I hate it, and I want to be at the games again. Hopefully next year we'll be able to do that for road games more than we were this year. No guarantees, though. Could be an entirely different world for all we know moving forward. Hang on. I should probably talk about something now that you care about instead of the plight of the homebound sports writer. Purdue, again, 73 to 52 over Penn State. The reason I'm repeating the score for the ninth time is because I still have to rub my eyes, not because I'm exhausted, but because the 73 seems like a really low number. Because if you watch that game, it felt like Purdue scored 90. The way they were operating offensively, as efficient they were, as crisp as they were offensively, just as productive as they were. It felt like a game where Purdue scored 90 points. But at the end of the day, you only scored 73. That is completely cosmetic. That is completely irrelevant. Because Purdue just stopped scoring. I think they scored 13 points in the final 11 and a half minutes after they went up 20. So the final point total doesn't matter outside of cosmetics, and I think that Purdue played better offensively than that final point total reveals, and obviously won by 19 points. The game was over, halfway through the second half, if not sooner than that, maybe even at halftime. So I'm only mentioning that to reflect how well Purdue played on offense. And I think part of the reason they played so well on offense was how well they played on defense. When you play really well on offense and you play really well on defense, chances are you're going to have a pretty good chance to win by. I just said they won by 19 points. I'm falling victim to the incorrect box score again. They won by 21 points. When you're really good on offense and you're really good on defense, chances are you're going to have some success. And Purdue was both of those things. I was surprised how easily Purdue won this game. I figured Penn State would give them all they could handle at the very least. I think Penn State's better than its record, although I say that knowing you can say that about every team in the Big Ten, because the Big Ten does to teams what garbage disposals do to towels that fall inside of them. Everything gets all gummed up and violent and nasty, and that's the Big Ten this year. And everybody is worse off from a record perspective than they'd be otherwise. If Iowa's in another league, they haven't lost 6 or 7 games, whatever they've lost. If Illinois is in another league, they haven't lost as many games as they've lost. If Michigan State's in another league, they're having an entirely different season. Same goes for Purdue. I mean, Purdue is having a great season by every measure here. But if they're in a different league, it's entirely different too. I mean, they're might be a top 15 team if they're in the ACC or something like that right now. Just remarkable how quickly Purdue has come along, that they're even capable of doing this, of winning this decisively on the road against anybody. And it's 2 games in a row. I know Nebraska is not exactly anything to write home about. I know Penn State's doesn't have a lot of wins this season to show for its competitiveness. But for Purdue to go on the road and do this in back-to-back games is still pretty impressive. 5-5 in the Big Ten on the road is a hell of a deal for a team this young. This profiled as one of those 2-8 kind of seasons on the road, just because Purdue's so young and young teams aren't supposed to necessarily win on the road. I think it really helped Purdue that the schedule was front-loaded. I think getting Illinois and getting Iowa and getting Rutgers earlier in the season as opposed to later, I think that created a little bit of a downward slope in terms of the level of competition. It allowed Purdue to be tested early and improve off of that, having been tested. And I think that set you up for the Michigan State win, for the Ohio State win, and then obviously, you didn't get Maryland, you didn't get Minnesota. You very easily could have gotten both of them, but you just played well enough in every game after those really difficult early games. And I think that worked out very well for Purdue because it made them better. And I think you're seeing that, when it's mattered most here down the home stretch of the season. Purdue's got a chance to win out here. And Purdue's got a chance to go to the NCAA tournament with a hell of a lot of momentum. And, Matt Painter's talked about wanting to peak at the right time. And I think Purdue's peaking at the right time here, or trending in that direction. And, the 2 guys who are a big part of that, obviously, are the 2 guys who stood out the most tonight. Those guys being Jaden Ivy, for one, obviously a budding star. There's only so many ways I can say this. He's just a fantastic player, a prodigious talent, and a guy who was just something Purdue's never had before from an athletic perspective, at least different from like a Carson Edwards, guys who are just forces of nature as athletes and whatnot. But he is just, Purdue's never had anybody who can be this explosive, control their body in the air like this. Best way I can put it is to put it kind of in like football terms. Purdue's had Rondell Moore and David Bell. And Jaden Ivey's like both of those guys. That if you made Rondell Moore and David Bell one dude, that's what you'd have in Jaden Ivey. He's explosive, he's quick, he's fast, but he also has unbelievable ball skills, unbelievable ability to control his body in the air. Just a really, really special level of athlete and physical talent on top of all of his basketball ability, obviously. And then the other guy, obviously, is Sasha Stefanovic, the biggest piece of the personnel puzzle that has had to fall back into place for Purdue leading into the postseason has been Sasha Stefanovic. He's back. I mean, he doesn't want to, really say he ever went anywhere because I know he's been confident in his own ability ever since he came back from COVID, but the results kind of have said otherwise. But ever since he made those threes at Nebraska, and then obviously today, he's great. I mean, he's fantastic. He scored 16 points for you. Only needed 2 3-pointers to do it. Got to the basket, got to the free throw line, was efficient, played a good all around game, was good on defense. He's back in the starting five now. I would imagine that's probably something that's going to endure. I was surprised. I didn't think Painter would tinker with his starting lineup this late in the season when Purdue was winning, but I was obviously mistaken. So shows you what I know. But he was fantastic. He's been really good for the last 48 minutes of basketball, which is essentially an NBA game. So I don't know why I even mentioned that, but it just came to mind. But Stefanovic is playing well. Obviously, Purdue made shots tonight too, and that's always nice and not a luxury Purdue's always had this season. But I think when you look at how they made their shots tonight, how many of those shots just splashed right down the middle of the net? I don't know if there's really any significance to that, but it looked like a team finding its rhythm. These weren't clunky threes Purdue was making. They weren't banking them in. They weren't needing help from the rim. They weren't needing favorable bounces. Splash right down the middle, and that I don't know if that speaks to a team finding its shooting rhythm. Jaden Ivy splashed a couple threes. Stefanovic splashed a couple. Aaron Wheeler starting to make shots. Eric Hunter starting to make shots, but they looked good doing it too. And if Purdue can find a rhythm from outside, they're obviously going to be tough to handle here. I thought Trevion Williams was good in this game too. I know he's not been as productive lately as he'd been, for most of the Big Ten season, but I thought he destroyed Penn State's post defense. I thought Purdue did a really nice job when they brought an extra defender to him. Hitting the roll man early in the game at the basket got Mason Gillis at least one layup, but then when they started covering the roll man, bypassing that and kicking it and reversing the ball to the other side of the floor, and then essentially playing 3-on-2 and getting some good opportunities off of that too. So I thought he played a really good game. I thought Zach Edey, once again, another really, really nice player for Purdue, is playing well. Aaron Wheeler is playing really well. Eric Hunter's playing really well. Again, I think Purdue's getting better defensively still. Penn State came in averaging 71 points a game. This is a difficult matchup for Purdue because they can really spread you out, attack from a lot of different positions. Didn't matter. Purdue was dominant defensively, forced a lot of turnovers, turned those turnovers into offense, even though if the box score doesn't necessarily reflect it. I thought this was a great game at both ends of the floor for Purdue, a great game all around, and just another signal that Purdue is really sort of taking shape here. I thought the decisiveness with which they won, it's really hard to say at 11:43 at night, with which they won was really impressive and the sign of a maturing sort of team. Matt Painter has a saying that, in only the way he can so eloquently, it's fiddle around and get beat. Now, fiddle is not the word he uses. You can imagine what that word might be, but I can't use it, unfortunately. If I could, our content would be so much better, so much more compelling. I'm telling you that, promising you that right now, but you'll never know because I don't see that day ever coming. Fiddle around and get beat. And you look at the game at Minnesota where, Purdue was the better team that night, I thought. And, they did some things that kept Minnesota around. Crazy stuff happened at the end. Marcus Carr pulls a shot out of his nether region. Some other things occur that, probably shouldn't have occurred. And Purdue lost that game. They fiddled around and got beat. Well, today they were, they just dominated. I mean, they played well with a lead. They haven't always done that when they've had a big lead. They've sometimes just kind of lost their train of thought, lost their train of thinking, lost their focus, whatever it may be, and kind of let teams sneak back into things. Didn't happen tonight, obviously. So just a really impressive all-around win for Purdue. I'm about to pass out. So I'm going to cut this off and get back to writing. That should be fun. So want to thank our sponsor once again, the Purdue Union Club Hotel, the newly reinvented Purdue Union Club Hotel. Please, once again, I implore you, next time you're planning a trip to campus, please keep the Purdue Union Club Hotel in mind. You will not be sorry. Thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials. However, as you process our materials, I will talk to you again, I believe, Tuesday night after Purdue plays Wisconsin, whose players are old enough to be Purdue's players' fathers. Thanks, everybody.